We're now live from Open Ed 16. This is Mandy Honeyman. I'm your virtual buddy for today. And over to you, Kristen and Robin.
Me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. We're here at the Open Ed Conference in Richmond, Virginia. Hi to George's class. This is cool. I don't think I've ever done a virtually connecting with students. This is great. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'd love to hear from you guys. Autumn, you want to start?
Hey, I'm Robin Keynes, and I am the Associate Director of Academic Technology at Capital University. I also teach a first-year seminar on digital citizenship, and I'm here taking in this Open Ed conference, feeling like really, wow, it's a lot. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. Robin?
I'm Robin DeRosa. I am a professor of interdisciplinary studies and also teaching currently a first-year seminar, so that's why I know some of you guys from George's class and that project that we did, and it's good to be here.
I'm Jesse Stommel, and I am a fan of Kristen, Autumn, Robin, Dani, and Sean, and I am also the executive director of the Division of Teaching and Learning Technologies at University of Mary Washington.
Good. Who wants to follow that? Danielle Paradis. I'm a qualitative researcher at Kwantlen Polytechnic University in British Columbia, and I'm based in Alberta, which is a province over. Little geology for you. Geography.
I didn't want to say anything. I was like biting my tongue inside.
Oh, man. So there we go. Sean.
I'm Sean Michael Morris. I'm an instructional designer at Middlebury College and the director of Digital Pedagogy Lab.
And I'm Kristen Eshelman. I'm Director of Digital Innovation at Davidson College. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with Teresa.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Teresa McKinnon. I'm otherwise known as at Warwick Language. I follow a lot of you guys, and those I didn't half an hour ago, I do now. It's great to see Catherine there. Catherine I've actually met in real life. My main role is Principal Teaching Fellow at the School for Modern Languages and Cultures, and my area of research expertise is voice over the internet. And I'm also co-chair of the Open Education SIG here in the UK.
Thank you very much. And Mia?
Hi guys, I'm so glad to be here with all of you. So many friendly, wonderful faces. I am Mia Zamora. I'm Associate Professor of English at Kean University, which is in New Jersey. I do a lot of work in digital media and learning, and I like to experiment creatively in open space in terms of writing. Okay.
Thank you. And Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen Weibel. I'm at Central Michigan University, and I'm officially educational technology, and I like to look at how students learn with technology.
And over to you. I don't know you, I'm sorry. Introduce yourself.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, George. Yes, George.
I'm George Station. Yeah, my lower third is not functioning. It's to be sorted out later. I teach a first-year seminar at Cal State University, Monterey Bay, so the central coast of California. And I'm here with my 10 a.m. Monday and Wednesday FYS 156 class. The theme is technology and society. And I could think of nothing better than the first part of the period was students presenting projects with different technologies. And I guess much of the rest of it is the class finding out a little bit about virtually connecting. And hi to Robin and to Autumn, because our classes just collaborated with Hypothesis on a first-year themed article over the last week or so. So when this opportunity arose, I thought, why not just bring the class along? So here we are trying to learn about virtually connecting.
Yay.
Thanks.
That's awesome. It's great to see you guys. You know, you're a little blurry back there, but it's, yeah, it was really fun to collaborate with the classes and everything. So it's really cool to connect in this way. Do we have DePauli here as well?
Yep.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
I'm on my mobile phone, so, well, hi everyone.
Hey, Polly. Great to see you. I know you just got in at the last minute there.
Yes, thank you so much for adding me last minute, and I really enjoy all the sessions, and I'm here to learn. And I've seen and communicated with a few of you familiar faces, so I'm so glad to be here and learn even more. Thank you very much. I'm from Folsom, California. I teach business, and I'm so much interested in open resources. Thank you.
Awesome.
So, and I was at the Open University, now I've moved to the USA, and I'm just building a house and keeping my hand in. Last year I was at Open Ed, so I met some of you then, and would love to hear about how you're finding it this year. Now, what are you all guys talking about? Over to you.
Yeah, so maybe if it works for everybody, we'll just go through and kind of say either or both what you're contributing and maybe anything you've taken so far if you've been around.
So I'll start, and I will say that I have, the last time I was at Open Ed was 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, this one and I, Dani, we proposed a session, and that session didn't get accepted, which is very sad. We should probably re-propose it. I was going back and looking at it, and it was one of the best proposals that I've written.
And we had no idea what it was going to be. But it sounded great.
And it was great. So it was called Queering Open. So we're still thinking about that. Yes. And then 2 years ago is also when I met Robin DeRosa at Open Ed. And it's been really nice to connect with the two of them and to sort of recognize how sort of the budding of relationships and friendships have come full circle over 2 years. And it's delightful to see you both.
Yeah, I might spit on that because I came, it was you too, right? Because I came 2 years ago and knew nothing, and I literally found the tweet. I've tweeted it a couple times since then because it was just like so amazing to me. After I heard these guys present, it was on critical digital pedagogy and FRERA and student, like authentic student-centered learning for digital, with digital technologies incorporated. So I tweeted out like, these are the people I want to follow into the future of higher ed. Like sign me up. How do I do it? How do you even do it, right? And then today I was like, oh my God, I did it. I followed them. I'm here. And I think also like just for students and stuff, the way I think I did that was through.
We've just lost sound for a second from you guys. Can you check your connections? We've lost sound from the conference. I've lost sound. Can I get a confirmation from Mia? Have you lost sound as well from the conference?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So we'll just hang on for a second and see if they're managing to get themselves back. Now we can see you nodding. Can we hear you? Can we just do a quick?
Was it us that you couldn't hear?
Or was it George?
Yeah, you just went dead for a little while, but you're back now. So that's
Oh.
We will keep on going.
We were just hugging each other.
That's what these are for, right? You're all great. We're all great.
Now we're going to actually talk about Open Ed, the conference. So yeah, maybe people want to share either what you're presenting or like what you've seen so far that's been motivating for you.
Yeah, I'll talk. So I'm going to be talking about narrative research. This is something that a group of us are interested in trying to figure out how.
Okay, so this is where in a virtually connecting session, sometimes we jump in with snarky chat because some of us actually know each other from other work. And so depending on the mood of the room, we write it out while we're waiting for that magic to happen and we get our broadband connection back, right? So sometimes we just carry on in the chat box and sometimes we carry on. There's also a YouTube feed this, and sometimes we carry on there as well. But usually, if the session is running like a half hour, there's not really a problem. If 1 or 2 minutes, there's somebody drops out.
Step back again. They just tried to reset. That's fantastic. Thanks, Kristen.
We're back. Can you hear us?
We can. So back over to you.
Good, Kristen.
I'll start over. Okay, so I'm here to present with some folks on narrative research. We're trying to launch not really a counter movement, although it's going to sound like that, a bit of a counter movement to the quant focus on learning outcomes and data analytics, and trying to understand better from student stories and faculty stories how higher education might change in positive ways. So that's why I'm here to talk about that, what open narratives mean and what that means for more of an open conversation between students and the institution. So I'm very much in alignment with the digital pedagogy ideal. And so one of the takeaways I had that I'd love to throw out to George's class is the first session we had with Gardner Campbell, his keynote talking about insights and needing to maybe push against learning outcomes and allow learning to happen in more open and emergent ways. I completely agree with that. On the other hand, I think we just can't get around the fact that we have to prove that any alternative method is just as effective for learning. And so how do we square that? And we got into a Twitter conversation, I think it was me and Amy Collier, about this. And me saying, well, we have to be sure we can prove whatever it is we're saying is more effective. And that students really, at least my experience from working with students at Davidson, is they crave that kind of scaffolding. They want to know what the rubric is. They want to know what the outcomes are going to be. And we started down the path of wondering why that is. So I would love to hear from the students if they're able to talk to us about this. Why do you crave scaffolding, rubrics, and outcomes when you're given assignments? Why is it uncomfortable to have more of an open, emergent space for learning, apart from grades?
Yeah, we had that grades conversation early, right, in this class. And so I'll start it off and hope that someone feels like joining in. We had that conversation early, and I know that across the different classes at CSUMB, we claim to be an outcomes-based institution, right? And it's in different places on our website. And in some ways, I do push against that in my own teaching. And in some ways, I kind of dragged my class along with that this fall. And so we're still working with that. We're still wrestling with that. That need for grades, which I actually have a kind of a self-managed scheme going. So the grades in terms of raw numbers is going however students are kind of self-monitoring and reporting and so on. And so if somebody's fighting for a number, they can get that number. Beyond that, to our course outcomes or learning outcomes important, I'm going to defer to the students on that and see if anybody has anything to add on things like course outcomes or learning outcomes, because we do have our lists of those even in the course where I've gone another route with the assessment and grading. So anybody got anything to say about course outcomes, learning outcomes? You look at those every day and want more? Or? Well, let me do a quick poll.
There you go.
How many folks are actually, you regularly check out those, or even not even regularly at all since the first week of classes? How many people actually look at the course outcomes for any of your courses? You actually check those outcomes?
We got one person in the back.
We got a few. In fact, the back row is totally into checking the outcomes. You want to yell something out? So
come forward and talk to us about that.
Yeah, would somebody come on up and get a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
Yay!
Yeah.
So I'm taking a macroeconomics class, and it's tied to service learning. So after I do my hours at my site, I have to write about the like a reflection of how I served. And so one of the components that I have to include in my reflection are two of the outcomes. So it includes like the culture aspect and then helping. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, don't leave, person. What's I have a question.
You already know, Robin. Come on.
What's your name?
Valeria Estrada.
Say your first name, Valeria with a V.
Yeah, you can call me Valerie.
Valerie. Or Valeria, they're both nice. So I have this question for you. Do you think, because I kind of love that you're actually going back to the learning outcomes and sort of reflecting on those, that's sort of cool. Do you think you would prefer to do your stuff on site and your service learning and then generate from that like what you learn, like it would be a surprise, but you would see what you learn? Or do you like the fact that the learning outcomes kind of came first and you're trying to figure out how you met them? Would you prefer to have a more open assignment where you could actually just write what you learned even if it didn't match up?
Yeah, I would prefer that, but I like the idea of having the outcomes introduced first and then trying to match it, because it's like something, like working towards something. But yeah, I'd rather have like openness and just write about, because I can do both. With that, I have like kind of like a general idea of what to include, but then I can expand and go on to like the actual experiences and stuff. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, kind of like a mix of having some goals, but also some freedom to do something different too. That sounds very nice. Yeah. We're all thinking, because of course we all have to figure out what to do. So when we hear, we're like, okay, we can work with that.
Yeah, and I think I often, like from a philosophical perspective, find myself railing against outcomes because I feel like they restrict us and they hold us. But the truth is that I think at the end of the day, it has to be like, what's going to help you? What's going to help you think through your learning? And you probably need a little bit of each. A sense that there are outcomes, but maybe that we can push and prod on them and maybe stray outside of them, that they don't have to constrain us.
Well, and I've been noticing this in the class I've been teaching, because it's the first time I've ever taught undergrad. So, you know, it's very, for me, it's very emergent, right? Because like, I feel like I'm learning so much from the students. But I feel this sort of sense of responsibility. On one hand, I really want to be open and just kind of let things come, but it's a first year seminar, so I need to prepare them for, quite honestly, a lot of their teachers are going to teach that way, right? They're going to have these outcomes, they're going to stick to them very, very closely, right? And so a lot of times I just find myself just kind of getting honest with the students and saying, look, I don't teach this way, but you're going to encounter other teachers who are going to teach this way. So let's think about how you're going to approach that when you have somebody else.
Yeah, I have to say, at the Open University, when I was teaching a first year class, and part of what we were doing was teaching people how to address their studies. How were they going to work and succeed with their courses? And so certainly we were teaching about learning outcomes, and we actually assessed them on reflecting on their learning outcomes. So one of the learning outcomes was to be able to work with learning outcomes, which did mess some of us tutors up a little bit, I have to say. But we got there in the end, and it worked quite. I mean, with some, it was really interesting how deeply they were able to wrestle with it. I think for those who weren't able to deeply wrestle with it, it was more of a checklist type affair. But yeah. Right. That was mine. Okay, so thank you, George. That was fantastic with your students.
Well, yeah. Thank the class, actually, because they got us here.
Yeah, and actually I want to pick up on that a little bit, because I sent out a tweet from another conference with an article that was written by an undergraduate, and I said, check out this student work. It's relevant to what we're talking about here at the conference. And the student who wrote it kind of called me on it and said, you know, I'm an author. I wrote this. You didn't even say my name. You just said, here's your student work. And what are you guys all doing over there at that conference talking about students? Who's there? None of us, right? And I think at a conference like this, where especially when we talk about open pedagogy, not just saving money, but really centering learners, it is also ironic that we sit here and we have so few student voices actually sort of, in the conference, challenging the great ideas that we might have, and put forward. So for us, it's really nice. The more of you guys in the back there that step up, we really like to hear from you. So it's great.
The truth is, I think that it's not that students are a resource for us. It's in fact that actually it is a student conversation, and there's a way in which we're trying to orchestrate a conversation and create space for those voices, not necessarily just use the voices of students to help determine what it is that we do. That's the shift that we have to think about what we do.
I had students in my first year seminar class, just like George's class, were doing some research about first year seminars and students, and they were reading about retention, and one of the students wrote this whole thing about like, yes, I agree with this article, I can see how the data works in my life, right? It makes sense. And at the end he said, the only thing I didn't like about this article is they kept saying they. Why would they say they when they're talking about students? And I was like, because they're not talking to you, right? And so it's really interesting how when you bring in the student voices, you realize that so much of the higher ed conversations are not really orchestrated to include them. So it's good to be called on that a little bit.
One of the ways that I've been trying to address what you guys are talking about is by including in the courses that I'm opportunities for student public, so their voices are amplified through the open infrastructure of the course, and they're reaching a broader community. And I think that empowers students to sort of take ownership of their learning more. But I absolutely think some of the points you're bringing up just now are really important ones, and I love thinking them through with all. It's a sort of counterintuitive thing to be talking about open learning and then at the same time and taking risks and designing for emergence, but then ultimately using a pronoun like they often in the reflective research that comes out of it. That's why I think these narratives around open, so I guess the research narrative, narrative research, as you're talking about, Kristen. And I'm wondering, what kind of discourse is emerging from, are they case studies? Are they interviews? Are they statistically driven? I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, well, for me, it started with our MOOC experiment about 2 years ago. Those were case studies. So that was a series of focus groups, interviews, observations, and whatever they contributed to the course. But that's where I got the idea to do this more deeply, because what we learned in those case studies was not what we expected to hear. We learned so much of what we didn't expect. There were a lot of unknowns that came out of that were really interesting pushbacks on the institution that the students didn't even realize they were doing. They thought they were pushing back on MOOCs. And what we found was that they were making a lot of contradictions in bias in the mode of delivery. That's bias against online learning. If I'm paying $50,000 a year for face-to-face, it's got to be better. So there were things like that were coming out of the conversation. There were contradictions around the notion of rigor and how much importance we put on that notion at Davidson, which we do, but not really recognizing where the rigor was having diminishing returns. And again, it was just, these were just weak signals that were coming out of the information that was all, I think, only possible because we were doing narratives. We were doing that kind of research. So the future research that we're going to be undertaking is sense making, is collecting story fragments as students journal throughout a course experience or the college experience overall. And I'm trying to push it because I'm hoping as we go through our QEP for reaccreditation, which is around inclusivity, that it gives us a lot of insights into where we might be structurally falling down in supporting students. We focus a lot on the classroom, but we don't focus on all of the other aspects of the student experience at Davidson. We're always looking at class outcomes. And so that's what we're interested in. We're going to be collecting the story fragments. It's what's off the top of your head at that moment and trying to uncover the the weak signals on campus. Where are things working well, where are they not? I hope that answers it. Yeah.
Can I offer a chance for a little more student input into this conversation on that point?
Always.
I'm wondering if anyone would like to offer an opinion, because there is some freedom, if you will, as far as topic selection, as far as what you find and share during the week, every week, and that kind of thing. How do you feel about that freedom? I don't think I've asked you that question, you know, as opposed to, you know, I know Valeria's the focus on service learning outcomes. Service learning is a specific area on our campus that's a thing, and they're very outcomes focused with some fairly tight framework, but a lot of the other classes are not. So I'm wondering, as first year students, what do you think of the level of freedom in either my class or some of the other classes? Freedom to explore, freedom to do some other things that aren't on a specific list. Because I haven't asked you guys, we've just been doing it for a few weeks, right? And I haven't asked how you actually felt other than in your reflection. So anybody got something you want to actually say about that? I mean, you know, you heard where Kristen's coming from with this. Too much freedom, not enough freedom, you don't want any freedom. Thoughts? I mean,
It's so difficult to be put on the spot.
I know.
We can come back if
maybe.
We might also, since I don't want to run too much out of time, I want I want to come back. So you freedom people, you'd be thinking. But in the meantime, Jesse and Dani and Sean, maybe tell us a little bit about what you're bringing to the table here and what you've taken off the table so far.
Sure. So I presented on qualitative research. It was on educators' experiences, so we're veering back to the experience of the educator in implementing open textbooks. My area of focus is because that tends to be an area that educators are involved in picking the textbooks. Of course, they're really central to that, but we don't always really explore the reasons. So I've been an adjunct instructor myself and given no freedom, right? You have a course syllabus that you have to pick, that you have to use, certain assignments, and even a certain grading. So there's no freedom for the instructor and there's no freedom for the students. So an open textbook, a lot of what we see is like almost too much freedom, maybe scary amounts of freedom. So what the research is showing is that there's so much information out there that it's hard for an instructor to come in and select a textbook. It's hard to make sure that there's quality that they're looking for. And then there's insecurity as well. It's one thing if you can just pick a resource and you assume, because it's, you know, it's a published book and it's beautiful and these people must know what they're talking about. And I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm only just like an educator over here. So it's challenging a lot of that dynamic as well. It's kind of the educator going into a learning role and having to kind of push through their own experiences. So because of that, you find that a lot of educators do rely on student opinion or what they think of as student opinion. So it saves money. That's true. Every student wants to save money on textbooks. Who just wants to spend $300 on textbooks? You don't. But on the other hand, if you have a resource, if you're an educator and you're trying to put out the experiences, you probably need more than just it saves students money. Aaron Campbell was talking today about passive learning and passive learning being sort of sum up that.
You're just breaking up at that last little bit there. Just broke up the last couple of sentences.
Oh, boy.
Gardner Campbell said, I was listening.
That passive learning was bad. And through that, he kind of pushed a few of his examples, he had students teaching blogs. That was something that I kind of took away from. That was really interesting. I've had students, I've tried to get them to do blogs, and you reach paralysis sometimes too, and it's completely out of your own frame of understanding for learning. I mean, I didn't know what a learning outcome was until I studied instructional design and then realized, oh, there's this thing in the syllabus that you could go back and you could read that, and maybe that's going to be on your test. That makes so much sense. But as a learner, I didn't have that. That wasn't something that was at all important to me. And, I think there's some benefit in having, not only being against passive learning, but having the instructor narrate their experiences as well. So this is why I'm teaching this way. This is what choices I've made for this course. This is why we're using an open textbook, not just because it's free, but because I was able to adapt some of the content, or we're throwing this out. And there's kind of room for more of a conversation between student and educator at that level.
Can I ask, because I know there's quite a lot of buzz about hypothesis, and you've been using it, haven't you, Robert? It was Robert.
Yeah.
I mean, are you finding that's changing the conversation about open textbooks as well, or?
Kind of annotating, the idea that students would be able to write over top of open textbooks.
That has not come up in any of the interviews I've done yet. So I think student annotation is, I haven't reached saturation yet, so I'm still looking for people. And so that might come up as a concept, and I hope it does, but as of yet, nobody has raised that. So it's either not happening very frequently, or the educators themselves aren't familiar with it. Some people are just getting their head around a new open textbook, so I guess having your students annotate it is probably terrifying.
And this is really kind of what Rajiv and I are talking about tomorrow, is if we build this movement, I call it a movement, feel free to disagree, but if we build this movement around lowering textbook costs, you don't end up having those conversations about what else this textbook might do besides save money.
Yeah.
So the power of the open license is really, to me, that number one, we will save money and increase your access to knowledge. And number 2 through 1 million are, we will do these amazing things with this really vibrant and alive text. But those only come in when you let pedagogy drive your transition into open. And I think most places right now are not doing that. They're just purely cost savings measures. So we're seeing much more emphasis on, like, this book looks exactly like your old biology textbook. Isn't that great? And I'm always like, no. Who would think that's great? No, like Sarah biology.
It's bad, but at least it's free and bad.
It's free and bad. Yeah, somebody said that last time, like, we're taking one shitty high cost textbook and replace it with a shitty free textbook.
Yeah, so I mean, that actually connects to what I'm not talking about at this Open Ed, because I'm actually just here I'm here to hang out with some of my heroes. Some of them are sitting with me right now, and I'm also just here as a learner and a participant. And it's actually the first conference that I've been to probably in 5 years that I wasn't speaking at. It's a really unique situation. But the thing that I think is interesting as each of you is talking is the idea of sort of asking students to write on the document, asking students to contribute to the textbook. And I also wonder if sometimes what we need to do is just leave empty space, leave blank space where they can or cannot speak. Like just that moment of silence where if no one speaks, it's fine. But if someone wants to speak in that moment, they can. And it reminds me of something that Dani and I wrote together for our session from 2 years ago that never got accepted. So this is like B-sides that I'm going to read from right there. This is secret B-sides that nobody has seen before. Queer open, then, is to imagine it as an emergent space always in process. From this vantage, open education is not confined by courses, platforms, syllabi, hierarchies, but exactly resists those containers, imagining a space for marginalized representation, a space that troubles distinctions between student, teacher, formal, informal learning. A space that recognizes our unique embodied context and offers opportunities for liberation from them. I like the idea of how many times I haven't looked at this in years, but I like how many times we repeat this idea of space, that it's sometimes about leaving an emptiness that students can potentially fill, like the margins in a book. there doesn't have to be any instruction about what to do with the margins.
The
You just
learning
have them
on
there.
management space, right? Versus
And that might be a good segue into Sean, talking about what he's doing here.
There are no segues. So I'm presenting actually with Amy Collier and Amy Slay, all from Middlebury, about critical instructional design, which is essentially a kind of new look at instructional design, trying to kind of question the assumptions behind the way that we design courses, both on ground and online, especially in the on-ground classes now are so often digitally enhanced. And you have on-ground classes that use the LMS for, repository essentially, or for the grade book. And then you have fully online classes. But all of them are sort of influenced by the standards set by traditional instructional design. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, and kind of, Amy's actually also going to be talking about the role of the instructional designer at the university. And we're at Middlebury, we're actually trying to work in a way that the instructional designer becomes more of a collaborator, instead of someone that, you say, hey, build this course for me, and it gets built. Someone who's actually considered a pedagogue, as opposed to someone who's just there to make sure everything ends up nice and neat inside the LMS. So yeah, so we're going to be talking about that.
I think if you've got more questions for either specific people or just general stuff, we'd be happy to field those before we sign off.
I'd love to quickly just go back to George just to see if any of his students want to
read them.
Came up with anything.
I think we have a student who wants to jump in on that earlier question.
Great.
And you heard Robin's subversive talk already. She does this all the time.
Which one? Just kidding.
Yeah, anything you said in the last 40 minutes. but yeah, please.
So my name is Jorelli. So Mr. George Station, he gives us a weekly assignment, and most of it's pretty free. So we are allowed to do a lot of pick and choose what we want. Recently, we've done a research project on racial beachhead, and he gave us not specific requirements. The only specific were that we needed to have 5 sources, including 2 of the books we read in class. And at times, it could get really difficult because you have a lot of freedom, so you get to choose what we want. My partner and I chose to do a blog, and I would say it was really successful. But from time, it was a little stressing to choose what we wanted to do. We didn't know whether we wanted to do something graphic or more of a detailed assignment. So sometimes he does give us a lot of freedom, and sometimes it could be difficult.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? I'm just curious, it's difficult, but is it productive discomfort for you, or is it just plain discomfort?
No, it's productive because we're able to learn new websites and technology, and I would say advance in different areas.
Cool. Thanks.
It's so interesting how school gets in the way of learning for us so often. You know, we have these mandatory requirements, these learning objectives. And then on the other hand, if you're just tossed into the wild as a learner, it's scary. It's like, how do I don't know how to, I'm supposed to pair it back with the instructor thinks, how a grade works, and am I going to fail? So I think it sounds like what you're doing, George, is probably based on a lot of trust in you as the instructor.
Yeah. The trust aspect is important, and I know that it's rough sometimes. I've got 3 class sections, so I'm seeing it evolve in different ways in each class. But the trust factor is important, and I think I might start off trying to build that differently in a run of the course, because I know that a lot of people just kind of went with me blindly without necessarily establishing that trust early in the semester. And I appreciate that, and I'm hoping to learn from that for future runs of the course. So that trust is a big word.
Yeah.
One thing I think is that developing trusts means stumbling together. Like it can't be something you perfectly architecture in advance. Yes, kind of build for it at the start, but there also, for trust to develop, you have to make mistakes together and you have to fumble through things together. And then you have to reflect on that and think about how to move forward from it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think the benefit at least the benefit to me as a student was seeing how someone who is accomplished in thinking deeply struggles through something they're uncomfortable with and modeling that. So I don't need to know what you know as an expert. I can go read your stuff. But if I see how you got there, how you struggled to know that to me is really valuable.
Some of this reminds me, just to maybe pull it back also to open ed, there's been this conversation that's happened between two kind of biggies in the field, Jim Groom and Mike Caulfield, who've been talking a little bit about the role of institutions in helping students work open or work in the open. And some folks like Jim kind of think that the institutionalization can really get in the way of what students are able to achieve if we freed them right from some of the chains that bind us here. And Mike, I think, has been more interested in thinking about how institutions can serve, especially sort of in public ways, to support learning. And, you know, I feel kinship with both of those models in an enormous way. I also like the tension between them. I don't feel like I have to pick. But I am really interested right now in, like, can we build particularly public institutions that are focused on the kind of support networks that actually allow people to mess up more, right? Which is traditionally not how institutions are built, right? They're built to sort of, you know, filter out failure. But could we build institutions that were built to accommodate failure? As one of my students blogged, you know, why would we penalize failure in like failing grades and stuff when it indicates learning? You know, every time you strive to do something you cannot do yet, right? You're sort of stretching in these interesting ways. But we don't really have structural models that are so good for doing
And also,
that.
I'm not going to say that structures or institutions universally support marginalized people, but when you're talking about marginalized groups, they rely on institutions in different ways, and they can also be damaged by institutions in different ways. But there's a certain degree of, like, imagining existing and succeeding outside of institutions is something that only particular people in particular contexts can really do.
That's right.
So I think that it can't be either or. Right. There are times when we need institutions and times when we actually need to eschew institutions.
And probably like at the same time.
Sometimes at the same time, yeah,
Right.
that's right. Yeah.
Paradox.
I don't know, we might be, are we closing in? What do you think, Andy?
I'm concerned to you guys that you can get back to your conference, and I think this has been amazing. So it feels to me like the right time to stop. What do you all think? And have a thumbs up or a thumbs down? You want to carry on? Okay, thank you very much, everybody from Open Ed, and I'm going to stop the broadcast now.
Thanks, everybody.